Hello everybody, welcome back to another video by DissociaDID. This is Soren with his twin sister, Very Close. This video is going to be about learning to unmask and letting go of masking, especially if you are a DID system or an OSDD system. One thing that helped us learn to unmask was getting to know other DID systems and other people in the system space. You're probably used to thinking of yourself from a neurotypical perspective, or thinking about what would look normal for a neurotypical person. Because of that, when you're trying to encourage yourself to unmask, or let down the sort of barriers that you've built up around yourself to make you look more normal, you're considering that from normal as a neurotypical perspective. That's not going to help you. Being able to interact with other people whose normal looks similar to yours will help you understand how it's not weird to exist in your natural state as a DID system. And it's worth noting as well, DID systems, many are very covert. Others are more overt, but there's no wrong way to be a system, just like there's no right way to be a system. Everybody's going to look a bit different. When we were first starting to create videos on DissociaDID, we started speaking to other creators, and that was something that really helped us feel more comfortable in our DID. We could see how multiple conversations could be carried on at once with just one body. So they may be having conversation between themselves with multiple alters in their system at the same time as having a conversation with me or us. And then if there's multiple people fronting in both system sides, you could end up with a four-way conversation with 4 alters and just 2 bodies. Now, normally, if you're not used to unmasking that and being honest about, or open about, there's actually more than one person talking right now, then you're probably going to feel like that's very, very weird and very, very scary, because it's not your normal. But interacting with other systems who have learned to unmask a little bit, or are more used to interacting with other systems and system spaces, you'll be able to see that, oh, that's a way to do things, and it's okay. We don't have to pretend here in this space, because it's how their brain works, just in the same way as it's our brain working. It's a lot harder, I think, to learn to unmask around neurotypical people, first of all. Not to say that you can't, of course you can when you worked your way up to it, but there's the extra layer of they might not understand this that can make it harder to let go of those protections that you've put up around yourself. Something else that helped us learn to unmask, especially when we moved into a house on our own for the first time, was speaking to each other out loud. Some systems don't really do this, others do. For us, especially with systems near the front, it's easier for us to hear the body speaking than it is necessarily to think back to each other sometimes, especially if we're dissociating and it can get a bit difficult to hear or communicate. But if you're right by the front, then you'll be able to hear the body speaking. Talking out loud to each other will help you learn to unmask, because you're learning to communicate with each other. You're learning to let down those walls and let the body speak in whatever voices are near front, whatever alters may be using the body, especially if you're blended or you're rapid switching, and that can help too. It's practicing letting those walls down in your own space, in your own environment, without anyone else's judgmental eyes on you, if that's how it feels to you. If that's one of the things that makes you want to mask, feeling like people are looking at you or watching you. When you're in your own space, even if you've just gone for a walk somewhere maybe and you're in a space on your own, just learning to speak out loud to each other in your own voices naturally, and not have a masking voice on all the time, will make it easier to then unmask around other people, because you know how it feels once you've started to do it for yourself. It'll be easier to drop back into that feeling because it's more familiar once you've learned to practice. How we started was asking people what they wanted for dinner, because sometimes that can be quite difficult if certain alters want certain foods and you can't really necessarily tell what they want, but you can tell that it's not what you want. For example, you're going to go make some pasta and somebody obviously really does not want pasta, and you can feel it and there's complaints and stuff, but you can't quite understand what it is they want. It can be that they can push feelings to you while you're speaking to them out loud. So for example, do you want this, with your hand hovering over the food? And you might get a feeling of, ugh, no, disgust. And then you'll know, okay, not that then. What about this? How do you feel about this compromise? And even if you can't hear each other that way, it's still improving communication, and it's learning to unmask. Another thing that we think is important is to force yourself to relax and take it slow. If you're in a situation where you are with other people, for example, friends, and they know about your DID, but you still feel like you need to mask around them, but you want to unmask, don't try force it. Don't try and be like, right, well, we're going to drop the mask immediately now and I'm going to be myself 100% right from the off. It's going to overwhelm you and might freak you out and might actually end up upsetting you more than providing any kind of successful unmasking experience. Just the thought and the acceptance of, I would like to unmask if I can, or I feel safe enough to unmask, but there's something in me stopping me at the minute and I don't know how. Just accepting that and acknowledging that that's how you feel is already a big step towards it. Knowing that that's something that you want will help you work towards it, rather than just feeling like this is something I should be doing. If you feel like you should, but you don't want to, you don't need to. You don't have to be 100% open about who's in front all the time. Even we mask a lot, even around people who know we have DID. So remind yourself that there's no pressure. And if it takes you a while to slowly drop the mask, then that's okay too. Now let's use the example of you're in a restaurant with some friends and you've decided that you want to try and drop the mask. Do you know who you are? First of all, do you feel grounded enough in the body that you're 100% sure who's in front? And are you used to unmasking in the body already? Do you know where your voice feels comfortable? Do you know what physical behaviors you would usually do? How do your shoulders usually sit? What feels comfortable to you? Because if you're in an external situation with other people, you might be quite tense and not feeling particularly comfortable, especially if you're masking, especially as the host, they might hold their body a little bit different than yours. You can start with that because nobody's going to notice that off the bat. Just adjust your body to feel comfortable for you. I know nobody's going to see it, nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to call you out. This is just you changing your posture to get more comfortable. Once you feel more grounded in the body that way, and more grounded in, okay, this is how I like to hold my body, that's already a tiny bit of unmasking that you've done. After that, you can think about, okay, do I want to slowly drop my voice mask? I want to slowly change the words I'm using. And you can pepper bits in and see how you feel about it. Does it make you panic, or are you feeling comfortable? Keep going. And remember, there's no rush. You don't have to drop it all at once. You don't have to do it now. If you change your mind, you can go back. There's no stress, there is no pressure. It's gonna be fine. And then depending on how well your friends know you, if you continue to drop the mask, they may notice anyway. We've had in situations where we don't really like to announce that we've switched because that feels weird, but sometimes we will. But other times, our friends will pick up on it and not make a big deal of it. So for example, let's say that they were talking to Soren and then Mike has obviously fronted, but we've not said anything about it. It's not been a particularly obvious switch. We've just let it happen. They will just pop the name in. So for example, they knew they were talking to Soren, have been talking to Soren, as Soren will notice a switch. They won't draw a big attention to it. They'll just be like, oh yeah, how are you feeling about that, Mike? They'll just drop a name in. So if you know someone with DID, if you definitely know that it's that person, to let them know that you're aware that they've switched and that you're happy for them to be there. Or you can bring it up gently. If you know that they're comfortable with this, discuss it with them first about whether this is a good way to approach a switch. Has there been a switch? Or this isn't Soren right now, is it? You don't have to tell me if it isn't, but you're welcome anyway, or something along those lines, you know? If they are able to tell, I'm sure that will put you a lot more at ease, because the hardest part is over. The hardest part is the transition between somebody knowing that you're switching and assuming that it's still the other person, because the difference is kind of uncomfortable. And remember, you can always write this off if you change your mind. You can write it off as saying like, oh, I feel a bit uncomfortable, or this part of my body hurts, or no, I'm just really tired. Whatever feels safest to you. And if you want to practice unmasking without announcing that you've had a switch, then that's fine. And if the people around you aren't going to be able to tell that you've switched, then there's a good way to practice too. And then if you want to, you can have that whole experience of yourself unmasked without them necessarily knowing, and then maybe bring it up later and be like, oh yeah, because I know, I'm going to use the example of Mike. Oh yeah, because I know Mike was out with you earlier because I switched out. And maybe they'll be like, oh, really? I didn't notice. Or what should I have looked for? I feel bad. I didn't notice that he was out. And then you can put some pointers in and be like, well, he may sound a little bit more like this, or he may talk a little bit like that, but we don't like to draw attention to when we switch because it feels awkward or uncomfortable. Or you can just explain that you are getting used to unmasking, and when you feel more comfortable, they will let you know when they've stepped into front. So for example, for us, we might just be like, oh, by the way, it's Mike at the minute, or oh, by the way, it's Soren at the minute, or whatever. Or even draw more attention to the switch if you need to, and just be like, I'm sorry, I'm switching, especially if you're dissociated, and then they'll let you be for a minute until you're like, sorry, I'm okay now, it's XYZ name. It can be as easy and simple as that. And if you have people who are familiar with your DID, understand your DID, and are accepting of you, then that makes things a lot smoother. You can work with little increments at a time. Like I said, it doesn't have to be all in one go. We've known some people who have subtle ways to demonstrate when they're unmasking who's switched out, for example, bracelets. We've known people who have like color-coded bracelets, and they will just move the bracelet, whatever's closest to their hand will be representative of whoever's fronting. So for example, especially if you have a smaller system, let's say you've got 5 colors and then everybody knows what color means what, and they just need to have a little glance down at your wrist to have a look at who's fronting. But then again, you have the issue of, do I remember to change it? or do I want to advertise it and stuff like that. We've never done that personally, but we know it works for other people. It got so quick for them that it became automatic, that once they had a switch, they would move it over, and they practiced doing that in their personal time as well, not around other people, so that when it came to unmasking around other people, again, they didn't necessarily need to draw massive attention to it, but someone's going to notice if you're moving your bracelet or whatever, and it becomes automatic. It doesn't have to be a big deal, you know? It's a subtle way to let it slip without necessarily drawing a whole load of attention to it. Don't forget to remind yourself throughout the experience that you are safe, that nothing bad is going to happen, that you are not in a trauma situation or a life or death situation or a scary situation that would require you to keep these masks up. The first step is always the hardest, and it's important to find people that you trust to be able to do this with. It's gonna take time, and it's not abnormal to be having a hard time letting down your mask. Like I said, I mean, we've made a career out of being open about the fact that we have DID. We've been doing this for, what, 6 years? We still find it difficult to unmask around people that we know, around people that we trust, even sometimes in front of the camera. Give yourself time, give yourself acceptance, work on it together, and start online if that's easiest for you. But be careful who you decide to trust. We made this video because it was a request, and if you would like to suggest or request videos for us to film, then you can do that on Patreon, which you can join for free to check it out, or join our lowest tier from £1 or $1 a month. So you can suggest what you'd like us to make. You can vote on polls about what videos may be coming up. You'll be able to see bloopers reels that are fully edited and quite funny from every video that we make. There'll be behind the scenes footage videos, which are information, background, and real videos about how we manage the switching, the dissociation, the amnesia, and everything to do with PTSD and DID when it comes to making these videos, and sometimes behind the scenes of our own life as well. Some of it might be advice that will help you in your real life, others will be reflections on other experiences that we've had, and some may be made specifically for you. If you like the sound of that, if you like the sound of merch being our hand-drawn designs, you can get hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, stickers, posters, whatever you fancy. It's all on our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Kaya&Co or patreon.com/DissociaDID. If you would like to support us in our fight to get justice against a man called Sergio Costa, you can have a look at what he did to us in the playlist What Happened to DissociaDID. It includes screenshots and updates through every single step of the court process, because we are in court with him, and it has been 4 years since the first legal letters were exchanged. We are in the last push now, and we are hopeful that your donations will get us through to the end of the line if you feel comfortable donating. We use Crowd Justice, which is a crowdfunding website specifically for funding for legal cases. The money is donated to Crowd Justice, and then they send it straight to our lawyers. It bypasses us completely, doesn't come into our bank account, we cannot access it, it goes straight to our lawyers and can only be used to fund the Sergio Costa legal case situation. So we can't do anything with it because it doesn't come to us. If you would like to, please share the playlist, share the original video about what happened to us, and or share the donation link. That is crowdjustice.com/case/DissociaDID, and we are very, very grateful for your help, and as soon as we have another update, we will provide it for you. Take care of yourselves, know that you are loved, you are capable of doing this, and that healing is a non-linear journey. There's going to be dips and rises, or maybe even rises and dips if I want to actually make that match my arm movement. But either way, you will get there. Don't lose hope in yourself, don't lose faith, you're going to be all right. Lots of love, everybody. Bye.